Good evening, St. Louis, and welcome into the Billikens Central postgame right here on STL Sports Central. I'm Matthew Rocchio. That is Ashley Wright. We're here covering a Billikens victory. Finally, me and Ashley get to talk about a Billikens victory. None of this Rhode Island or Dayton stuff we got to deal with tonight. It's a Billikens win, 91-76. The score belies how close this game really was. Ashley, your opening thoughts on this game?
Immediately, first 5 minutes, I text you, Matthew, I'm scared because it looked like maybe we were going to have to go and suffer another loss, get on here and talk about what that means for tournament implications, but we do not. The halftime adjustments, Billikens were able to turn it around, pull out this win, and now we can talk about a W here on the postgame show.
Obviously, when we talk about the difference in the game, Duquesne wins the first half, 41-39. Billikens dominate, beat them by 17 in the second half, 52-35. I know halftime adjustments can be overrated. You know, Scherz always talks about how if you wait till halftime, you're not a very good coach. You got to make them in the moment. But halftime is really when we kind of see two different teams playing. What were the two biggest differences between first half Billikens and second half Billikens to you tonight, Ashley?
Smothering defense. They weren't playing lackadaisical. They were playing team defense. They forced a lot of droughts to this Duquesne team. They ended the game on a 15-2 run, and that was the difference maker. Getting Robbie Avila involved as well in that second half. 21 second half points from Robbie. That was major for the Billikens.
Yeah, I mean, and that we're going to have to talk about Robbie too. And of course, DraftKings Sportsbook, where the crown is yours. If you had any money on Robbie or the Billikens tonight, it probably went pretty well. We'll also talk about home bank and our money moment of the game. Hard not to maybe pick Robbie for the money moment of the game. But when we're talking about Robbie Avila, what a game for him tonight. He goes for 23, 7 and 7. He also has a block and only one turnover. That's the thing. When Robbie's scoring like that, and he has that run where he had 15. He had all 15 of the Billikens points in a stretch at one point. He goes on that kind of run. It loses it a little bit what he was doing from the passing game. But 23, 7 and 7. We'll talk about the shooting, but the 7 assists were unbelievable from Robbie Avila tonight.
Yeah, he was able to get a lot of different guys involved. Quinn Jones stepped up tonight, 17 points, 90% from the free throw line. That's also major. Trey Green, 3 threes tonight. So Robbie Avila able to dish the ball out. A lot of guys able to knock down some open shots. Team basketball, I can't emphasize that enough for the St. Louis Billikens today.
Yeah, very different game for both these teams. Billikens, though, you mentioned it right there, Ashley. Free throw shooting has been a bugaboo at times for the Billikens this year. Tonight, not so much. 21 of 24 from the line. They started the game 5 of 7, so you break that down. They go 16 of 17 in the second half. That's how you win, because to your point, there were a lot of long scoring droughts for Duquesne, but there were a lot of long scoring droughts for the Billikens from the field. The only reason they weren't full-on scoring droughts is because they kept getting to the line. They kept making their free throws. The fact that they were able to do that in a very oddly officiated game on both sides. Billikens had some bad calls go against them in the first half, but they had some really bad calls go their way in the second half. Really finally got that home whistle that everyone talks about them never getting free throws. Just a monumental thing for the Billikens, especially in that second half.
Yeah, we talked about it in the last post-game show. And the Billikens game is to either drive in close, get those easy layups, or shoot threes. Today, when the threes weren't falling, they were driving in close and drawing fouls. That's the difference.
Yeah, three-point shooting was oddly split out, actually, or pretty evenly split out, I should say. They went 8 for 17. Now, that was after a pretty bad drought at the very end of the first half. At one point, they were 7 of 12. In the first half, and they go 1 for 5 to close it out. So if you go off that 7 of 12, they went then 8 of 11 in just the second half, I should say. So both times they had these huge chunks where they were hitting a lot of big threes, and that's a reason why, even though they didn't have a lot of maybe successful possessions overall, they were kind of winning on the margins by adding up those points with so many three-point shots. They made 16 tonight. Duquesne makes just 8. Right there, you got 8 points that differentiate this game at any point. Could have been a big difference.
Absolutely, they could have, but the three-point making, again, they just stayed true to St. Louis Billikens basketball. The exact same recipe that made them successful all season long is the exact same game plan that they came out with here tonight. Although they started a little bit flat, they were able to hone in defensively.
Yeah, it started a little bit flat because Duquesne was making everything. Duquesne, by the way, opened up in the game 4 of their first 4 three-pointers. After that, they would go 4 of their next 20 three-pointers. Shooting variance is a real thing, people. If you're making a lot of shots, but you're not doing anything to create better looks, at some point it's going to regress towards the middle. Let's get to some of the chats here on the Billikens Central postgame. Rockstar Journey 100 says, I hate to say this, but the Billikens should not have struggled against this team. They finally pulled away, but there's problems. Is Scherz running the same plays game after game? What you're probably seeing when you ask if Scherz is running the same plays game after game is their flow offense, which has the same basic tenets, 3 or 4 things that everyone's supposed to do. It's the dribble handoffs. It's sometimes the Kent screens they like to run. It's that kind of action. It's the pick and pop. It's the pick and roll. It's the back screens. It's different movement and cuts when Robbie goes top of the key, which is something they like to run a lot of their offense at. That's all their flow offense. They have a lot of set plays, but Scherz likes this team to play fast, and playing fast means getting to your flow offense. But nothing you said was wrong there, Rockstar Journey. There's definitely some issues, and they did creep up again tonight.
Yeah, they did. They showed early, but I like that they were able to bounce back. I think the difference in the other 2 losses versus tonight is that they were able to hone in quickly. The other 2 games, they allowed stretches to run an entire half, and it was hard to recover. But the fact that this run only lasted 5 minutes, I think that's also promising for the Billikens.
And I do want to point out, Rockstar's saying this, the records are going to say one thing, but Duquesne is a team that's built really well to play the Billikens tight. That's why it was such a close game at Duquesne earlier on in the conference schedule, where the Billikens had a halftime lead, but it was only because Duquesne fought back late in the first half. And it was a close game because at no point were they able to pull away, because Duquesne, very similar to Dayton, very similar to VCU, very similar to I'm blanking on the last team I'm thinking of right now. There's a lot of teams in the A10. That's why the A10 has this physical mindset. It's why it has a reputation of being such a physical league, is because all these teams play very physical styles, and that doesn't work very well for a team like the Billikens, who do a lot of really, high fun plays and a lot of really crappy plays at the bottom, and so teams can take advantage of that. At the same time, I also think that Duquesne is built like GW and Dayton in that they beat you up. They play physical. They hook and hold. Josh Scherz talked about it after the Dayton game, and Dayton people are going at me crazy right now on Twitter at Rock STL because I pointed out a lot of the hooking and holding that Dayton was doing that really, really worked against the Billikens. Duquesne's hooking and holding worked tonight for the most part. The Billikens were able to get some more shot attempts, but I think that's probably the difference between what the Dayton team really is and what Duquesne really is. Billikens still have to learn how to play against a physical defense, because tonight, again, in the first half especially, they were thrown off by physicality. That can't keep happening.
Yeah, it was Dixon in the middle that was able to get loose in the post. He was very physical, banging down low, playing a traditional post game. And I think that's what gave the Billikens some trouble early. But again, great job, and kudos to them for being able to bounce back. They brought Dixon out. Having to guard Robbie beyond the arc is not easy. And so that is really what opened up the Billikens to be able to come away with this.
Another thing to point to physicality, this is where the Billikens did not win the physicality game late. Both teams had 6 offensive rebounds about halfway through the second half. Duquesne ends with 11 offensive rebounds, and part of that is because they're missing a lot of shots. So there's a lot of attempts. The fouls were going against the Billikens, or going for the Billikens, so they were going to the line, while the Duquesne was actually missing some shots. But still, there are some physical factors that you have to worry about if you're a Billikens fan, because it worked against Dayton, and it worked to slow them down again. They were slow again today. The offense was slow until really the second half when Trey takes over and Robbie has his run. The offense really wasn't getting good looks. And again, Duquesne did a really good job other than the foul calls, and we can talk about the officiating being uneven on both sides because it was. Duquesne did a really good job other than foul calls of playing the Billikens in a physical defense, and we can see that does not blend well for the Billikens. They got to figure out ways to fight through those screens. They got to figure out ways to, Rockstar's point, if they're going to do those same things, those same kind of actions over and over again in flow, they need to be able to create leverage with those actions. And other than certain parts tonight, and going back to the Dayton game, they haven't created a ton of leverage offensively over the last few games.
Yeah, it looked like for the early parts of this matchup, Duquesne took a page out of Dayton's book. Physicality, bumping, able to get the looks that they wanted. They dictated the pace, and by doing that, they were able to put SLU on its heels. But SLU, again, able to fight and claw their way back into this one. But it was not easy.
Let's go to our chat again. Eggplant Emojis was asking this earlier, and we will answer it. If SLU doesn't win the A10 tournament, can they still make it to the big dance? Yes, Absolutely. As long as they take care of business, beat Loyola Chicago, beat George Mason to close out the regular season, and win at least the first game they play, which obviously after the double buys will be the third round of the A10 tournament. Win that third round of the A10 tournament. Even if you lose in the A10 tournament after that, they are getting their ticket punched. They will be an at-large team. They're a 7 seed right now. That's after getting moved down the seed line by Lenardi from a 6. They are going to make the tournament unless they absolutely implode against Loyola Chicago and do not show up on the road against George Mason. That's a possibility, but if they're a tournament team, then they won't do it. And if they crumble like that, then they're not the team we thought they were.
Exactly. Just like we said after the last post-game show, this SLU team is definitely going to make the tournament if they can win that opening game in the A10 tournament. I don't see them dropping the ball against Loyola Chicago, but if that does happen, then like you said, Matthew, maybe we should have thought differently of this SLU team. But they've been taking care of home court all season long, so that's the bright side of it all.
That's a good thing. They have one more game to finish undefeated at Chaffetz Arena. I think the last time they did that was in the early 90s, so we'll see if they can make a little history. They did make some history tonight. As I mentioned in the title of this episode, the 14th conference game, first time they've ever won a 14th conference game in Billikens history. Obviously, the schedule has changed over the years, but nonetheless, the record is there. Rockstar says, in your opinion, do you think these A10 teams are studying video of the past Billikens games more intently and closer than normal? It seems like lately these teams are picking up tells. I just think when you get this much film, because obviously that's exactly what they're doing, when you get this much film, things start popping out. And I think, certain teams that are built to do it can do it. It just so happens that Dayton had a really good game plan. VCU's always built to play like that. Duquesne played like this earlier on in the season, so this shouldn't be a surprise. GW is uber athletic, got people everywhere. Castro's a monster. Like, those things shouldn't surprise you. Teams are figuring out how to take away the Billikens off-ball motion. There's no doubt about that. Billikens have to figure out more ways to pivot.
Yeah, and obviously you take from other teams that have been successful against a team like SLU. So when you watch Rhode Island and what they were able to do, Dayton and what they were able to do, you pick and choose some of those sets and bring it to your own game.
Great point by Eggplant Emoji. I just completely blanked on this. If it happened in the early 90s, it wasn't Chaffetz. You're right. It would be the first time they went undefeated in their home arena since the early 90s. It would be the first time they ever went undefeated at Chaffetz. Good job catching me on that one. James Hoffman, everyone's watching video. I think the book is out. Get physical and restrict the movement of the Bills. Keep it up until the officials stop you, and that's exactly what happened tonight. Officials started calling it. Billikens got to the line, go 16 of 17, and that's a big reason why they legged this one out with a 15-point victory. But to James's point, everyone sees it. Everyone's going to play the exact same way. Even if they're not built that way, the way the VCU or GW is, teams like Dayton will figure out a game plan that forces them to play more physical, and if they can get away with it, it could be problematic for the Billikens. They've got to find ways to pivot if teams are going to play them like that. And teams are going to play them like that. So pivot.
Especially in the tournament, in either tournament, the A10 or March Madness tournament. So the tough thing about it is it can be difficult to adjust your style of play regarding to how officials are calling it. But I agree with James. Until they figure it out, keep doing it.
James Hoffman says, we had a crazy amount of teams start out ridiculously hot from three. It hasn't been as bad as people thought. Tonight was another night where Duquesne just seems like they couldn't really miss early on in the game, and that was a little crazy. We got to do a little bit of business here. Got to tell you about our wonderful friends over at Home Bank. Ever since day one here at STL Sports Central, we have known that we needed to pair with somebody for our business banking needs, just like you do, whether it's business or personal. It's not just about numbers. It's about relationships, and with Home Bank, those relationships make all the difference. Home Bank is the team behind our team at STL Sports Central. Visit myhomebank.bank or call 855-577-2001. That's Home Bank, member FDIC, more than a bank. They're your business partner, and they bring us our money moment of the game, brought to you by Home Bank. I'm not going to go with the 15 straight points scored by Robbie Avila that took this from a 41-45 deficit for the Billikens all the way to a pretty big lead. I am going to go with Trey Green a little bit later on in the game. Back-to-back three-pointers from Trey. We also got to throw out those three-pointers set up by blocks from Robbie Avila and Quentin Jones, and then another steal that was forced by Quentin Jones down on the other side. Back-to-back Trey threes. That put the game away. Duquesne never really threatened after those threes. That's my money moment of the game. Again, Trey Green coming up big for the Billikens.
And I'm going to go with a highlight moment. It was Kellen Thames' alley-oop. I thought he was going to touch the roof of Chaffetz. That was so pretty.
There it is. That is our money moment of the game. Billikens win again, 91-76 over Duquesne. We've got one more game here from Chaifetz Arena, and it is against the bottom of the conference in Loyola, Chicago. Billikens take care of business there. They then go on the road to face off against George Mason. That closes out the regular season, and then we are in Pittsburgh for the A-10 tournament. Billikens have the double bye, so they will be playing in the third round for their first game of the A-10 tournament. I believe they still need to win against Loyola Chicago coming up here in this next week, and that will make them the A-10 regular season champions. We will get out of here on that note. Your final thoughts, Ashley Wright.
Oh, great bounce back. Looking forward to Wednesday night. Hopefully they can secure being undefeated at Chaifetz on senior night, and just looking forward to it, really.
One last thing, because you mentioned him earlier, we need to mention the great game from Quentin Jones. 17 points, 3 rebounds. He also picks up 3 assists and 2 block shots. Doesn't get credit for the steal like he should have. 9 of 10 from free throws. He's had a rough season at the rim. Another rough game at the rim for the Billikens. Another rough game for him at the rim. Just 3 of 7 from the floor, but 9 of 10 from the charity stripe. Fantastic game from Quentin Jones. Billikens stepped up all over the place. 23 from Robbie, 17 from Quentin Jones, 14 from Trey Green, including those big threes. And then the Billiken high for his one season here, Paul Otieno, coming into the game, it was 13, and he ties that with 13 tonight. Billikens win 91-76. They get their 14th conference win, and they will go for the A-10 regular season title when they face off against Loyola Chicago. Also going for that undefeated season here at Chaifetz. We'll be right here live on the Chaifetz baseline to cover that game as well as we have been for every game this season. Of course, we'll be live right here on Billikens Central Postgame after the George Mason game, after the A-10 tournament games, after the NCAA tournament games, right here on STL Sports Central. Like, share, and subscribe. That way you know when we're going live. For Ashley Wright, I'm Matthew Rocchio. Billikens win again. Have a great night, St. Louis.